It's probably the biggest honeypot in the world to governments. So I can't imagine that their interest in it is going to wane. It will only increase in focused intensity until people are pressured enough to give up information. And there's an expression, the smartest people learn from their other people's mistakes. Normal people learn from their own, and people at the bottom of the totem pole don't learn at all. And so I didn't want to become someone who made the same mistakes in the past. People know that AI is available, and so they can compare your services against, a GPT. Hey, here's all my information. How much tax do I owe and why? It's the job of the professional to help them understand the difference between just that raw output and how it might affect your life. It's like, oh, well, what if you get married one day? What if you split up? What if, you start a business? What if you shut down a business? It's like there's more considerations than strictly what data can produce. It's like, what is the interpretation of that data? Integrity is a word we throw around, but it's almost like to do the right thing when no one is watching. It's like I could probably do better in business if I told people, like I said, there's a free lunch here, there's an escape hatch, but I wouldn't be much of a professional if I did that. You know what I mean?
Hi, welcome to Bitcoin for Professionals. Today we're joined by Jon Tellis. John's a chartered professional accountant and a partner in Numberly. He was previously a partner at one of the largest accounting firms in Canada, with over 15 years of experience doing accounting, tax, and estate planning for high net worth families and entrepreneurs. At Numberly, Jon helps people manage their wealth and tax obligations in Canada as well as internationally. He's also the co-founder of Generatio, a Bitcoin-focused professional network for family office and advisory services. Jon, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. Happy to be here.
Great. Look, you've described yourself as an accountant, but not boring. So right off the bat, let's start with that. What do you mean by that? And what can people easily misunderstand about accounting or yourself?
I think people underestimate the creativity that most accountants have because the expression of that creativity is typically in more mundane things such as numbers. Accountants also have a key way of analyzing technology and trends in the world because we're so used to synthesizing huge amounts of data from different sources into more regulated productions like a tax return, let's say, or a financial statement. So I like to think of myself as a creative accountant and one who uses his skills to express how technology influences our behavior and our lives these days.
Okay. And taking you back to the start of your professional journey, is that what you've just described, how you got into accounting, or what brought you to it, or what interested you about it?
To me, accounting was the greatest risk-reward trade-off of all the professions I could choose. I initially loved computers. I grew up in an age where, there were no computers until maybe I was like 13 or 14, and then we got a personal computer. And so while it was fascinating, when I went to university to business school, accounting was a means for you to get a job sooner, a co-op job, and to be compensated and defray the cost of your education. Whereas pursuing something like law, which I was more interested in pursuing, was not something I could do until after I graduated or if I left early. Computers to me always felt like a hobby, like an experiment. I never really thought of it as a profession, because my father was an accountant and my grandfather was an accountant too. So it just seemed like a logical thing to do while I could find my way into the next. Little did I know, 15 years go by and you've built a profession out of it and you've forgotten what your passions were.
Okay. And you mentioned computers, which kind of seems pertinent to what we're talking about. I'm thinking particularly of like AI. So with AI, how do you see it impacting how people work with the accounting industry? So how do you incorporate AI into the work that you do with Numberly?
Yeah, so the thing is, it used to be a very manual process. For instance, like we would have to, if in auditing a company, we would look through maybe an Excel spreadsheet of thousands of transactions and then maybe using professional judgment, select some. And then that became more of like a V lookup where you could look for transactions that maybe have no description or have some outlier that, might detect some impropriety. But using AI, like you can just say, hey, can you look for all the suspicious transactions? And it'll find that for you. So it reduces a lot of the grunt work, I'll call it, in large quantities of data. But what it misses, like for instance, I remember speaking to someone some time back. There was a, I don't know, 200-page document that MicroStrategy released from one of their quarterlies, and AI will synthesize it like that, right? It'll look for all the suspicious things in there, let's say, or the things that are of relevance. Maybe that's the better word to use here. But I read the whole thing, and I looked through it, and I found a couple of things that have interested me, like, oh, there's a private plane that, shuttles executives around. That was interesting. And the way in which the accounting standards change, like, how is that going to affect the market perception? The AI is more black and white, whereas the professional is supposed to add their creative lens, their professional expertise to find something that's maybe more qualitative, not quite quantitative. So while AI saves a lot of time, it doesn't replace the professional. It just changes the role the professional has in accounting, in my opinion. And that's what we try to do at Numberly.
Okay. So maybe like a bad personal experience that I might have had with accountants in the past is that some of them seem to charge and present as if they're giving you advice, but in fact they're giving you administration. Do you see AI flipping that and changing that dynamic between clients and accountants dramatically?
I think so, and it has with us. Like, the whole premise of Numberly was like, it's a compression algorithm. It's like what is the simplest way to put information together to communicate? It's like Numberly is not supposed to be the name of a person. It's supposed to just represent the data. So what we do is the same, accounting and tax work that any other accounting firm can do, but we just come at it with a different lens, particularly with newer technologies. People know that AI is available, and so they can compare your services against, a GPT. Hey, here's all my information. How much tax do I owe and why? It's the job of the professional to help them understand, the difference between just that raw output and how it might affect your life. It's like, oh, what if you get married one day? What if you split up? What if, you start a business? What if you shut down a business? It's like there's more considerations than strictly what data can produce. It's like, what is the interpretation of that data? So I like to look at it almost as like a therapeutic understanding of the numbers, right? It's like, how are they making you feel rather than what they truly are. Whereas, like, otherwise accountants are more, you know, apples to apples comparison. We try to be an apples to oranges comparison where we offer just further insights because of our understanding of technology.
That takes us nicely into like the human element of things as well. So you spent over 15 years at one of the largest firms in Canada. What clients were you working with? What were some of the lessons and observations that you could share about how people manage their wealth?
I mainly worked with private clients, meaning like non-publicly traded companies, and wealthy families, and generational wealth. So it might have been built by the matriarch or the patriarch, and then you're dealing with, the children or those who inherited the business or will be inheriting the business. And what I learned is that they have a lot more complexities in life, but it requires a very compassionate and patient advisor to give them the services that they need. It's like, I take for granted, for instance, the fact that I get a piece of mail from Canada Revenue and it doesn't bother me. Okay. But it's like, to someone who is uninformed about how significant that document can be to the greater business, it might only be for one entity within a big umbrella. But I can look at that and say, oh, this is routine. This is something that I can deal with, rather than it just being, like I said, input, output, more formulaic. It's just like, well, you have to consider that this could be very troublesome to a large family with many different businesses. Maybe they got 50 of these letters and you've only seen the first one. You have to kind of put yourself in those shoes. But I did not come from a wealthy family. You know what I mean? My parents came here with almost nothing. And so it's like, to try and frame it by which they have inherited this wealth. It's like, I can't, but I can frame it by which I would interpret it if I were in their shoes. And so that helped build a bridge between them, because we need to bring insight to them that they don't already have. And so it helped me just to understand what it was like if I were to have that wealth one day. You know what I mean? What I would do. And so I think it's just humility as a professional advisor is the biggest takeaway that I had. It's like, just because you have a lot of money doesn't mean that you don't have stressors. If anything, it's an exact trade-off of what you do have, because you simply have more of the opposite.
Okay, well, that's interesting that you sort of talked about your background there and how that sort of contrasts to the clients that you're working with. In 2020, you had what many would dream of, so like a full early retirement. What prompted that decision for our listeners, and what brought you back, not to the traditional firm model, but to co-found something new with Numberly?
As the pandemic hit us, I was always an avid stock investor, and I went the full gamut of, it's like index funds, dividend stocks, tech stocks, SaaS companies, and so forth. I'd seen Bitcoin many years before from some ex-colleagues who were using it because they wanted to, gamble online or game. It used to be like a token in a game where people would give you Bitcoin if you won a competition or something, you're ranked high. But I saw things, pivot technologically where a lot of those, tried and true investments really tanked, at least here in Canada, and other, more unconventional ones grew exponentially. And Michael Saylor called it like the V-shaped recovery, where it seemed like the world was ending as a consequence of the pandemic, but the market had already priced in the recovery. And so it's like, but only if you had the right stocks. Like if you had restaurant stocks or you had certain things like that, like you lost everything. But my eyes went towards Bitcoin because that was one of those securities, I'll call it, that had lost a lot of value, but then quickly began to gain steam. And so it was a very divisive time also in Canada. And I thought that I would be a partner for a long time, but I also started to get that fire in me, that excitement with Bitcoin and digital assets in general. And so I just decided, at a time when life was difficult, to YOLO in, and that was able to finance my exit from that corporate world and traditional path.
Wow, great. Okay, so like several others as well, myself included, you went all in on Bitcoin during the pandemic. Did it take a few encounters over several years, or like what was your aha moment?
It's hard to explain. It's almost like when I first started to play computer games, it's like how they infected me. It was like the shadows. It's like it didn't have the graphics, but when you played it, I felt like I was there. It felt like I was inside that world. I can think of like Quake, for instance. There was just something about Bitcoin I felt when I first started to play with technology years ago. I realized by the time I could figure out what that meant, it would be too late. It's just like I had more of like an inspirational realization that led me to just go for it. And I had the security of a very, very stable profession also. Like accounting firms did quite well during the pandemic, simply because there were so many tax relief measures that were conferred upon businesses in Canada that were difficult to understand. So clients coming in needed to survive, and so they needed our expertise more than ever. So I knew that like if this didn't work, it's like I still had a stable career, and my portfolios were down anyway. So like what was the risk really? It's like most people would have been fortunate to even be where I was back then, let alone now. I just thought it was a calculated risk that should the market turn, I think these digital technologies, and I invested in other ones as well, but these would be the future, at least for the foreseeable future back then.
Okay. And as you held Bitcoin over the years and time passed, how did your view of Bitcoin and what it means evolve to you over time? Like you mentioned, you got into other projects or tokens as well. How did your view of all that evolve over time?
I didn't get involved in any other projects or tokens. I only hold Bitcoin. But I started to appreciate the challenges that the Bitcoiners had. I never understood, like, again, the emotional aspects of owning Bitcoin, because the type of people I worked with had built their wealth up over generations. The Bitcoiners that I started to meet as I started to travel and go to meetups built it in a much more compressed time period. And there's a big difference between buying it at $10 versus 100 versus 1,000 versus 10,000 versus 100,000, and how quickly it grew. And so many did not appreciate the opportunity cost of earning or mining Bitcoin and then spending it, and then years later realizing, oh no, those thousands of Bitcoin I used on mundane everyday things, that was like exponential generational wealth. But I didn't see it for what it was at the time. And so trying to find the proper advisor or counselor in that space is nearly impossible, because when you go to a proper accounting or law firm, they don't have the same orientation towards technology or to investments. It's like they're thinking more in terms of like, how is my time compressed into hourly bits? You know what I mean? And how are those bits distilled between what we charge clients and what we pay our staff, and like all the expenses. And like Bitcoiners don't think that way. Like people who really understand technology don't look at that way, because technology is exponential. It's just like even a small amount of time invested in Bitcoin long ago could result in unbelievable riches. But that did not give you the discipline to hang on to all of that Bitcoin. And so I was faced with that decision. Well, now what do I do with this Bitcoin? You know what I mean? It's just like it's really not valuable unless you hodl it. It's just like you still need to have income. You still need to, or you need to sell some, or you need to figure out other ways to get by, so you don't become like those people from before. You know what I mean? And there's an expression, the smartest people learn from their other people's mistakes. Normal people learn from their own, and people at the bottom of the totem pole don't learn at all. And so I didn't want to become someone who made the same mistakes in the past. And so that's what led me to creating, with my partner Jay Numberly, a place where we could offer really progressive advice to individuals in light of, an investment like that, or a different way of thinking, in a way that the market was lacking, simply because so few professional advisors hold assets like Bitcoin.
Okay, that's really interesting. So now, as an accountant and a Bitcoiner, what are some of the biggest mistakes that people can make when it comes to Bitcoin and taxes? Like, what might people not think of before they start spending or buying Bitcoin?
So again, as an accountant, you'd have a tendency to overthink things and to synthesize a lot of information into something simplistic that makes sense to me, but always makes sense to that doesn't necessarily not make sense to clients, but it's hard for them to accept. So I immediately thought of death. What happens when I die? What happens? Because Bitcoin, as you know, is a bearer instrument. Okay. It's like, I don't need to have $50 million in Apple stock to be able to put together an estate plan for someone, because stocks are treated a certain way for tax purposes. So is Bitcoin, but you can't just on a dime transfer your Apple stock to a hardware wallet, and take custody of it. You don't have custody of it. It's like paper stock. It's like paper Bitcoin. So I realized, like, how on earth are my heirs going to be able to retrieve this Bitcoin and also continue to protect it? Because while Bitcoin can last forever, as I understand the technology, humans are fallible. It's like there will be human error. And particularly when people are sick or they're dying, they have a tendency to be weak. You know what I mean? And that's the time when you need to be strongest. So I thought, wow, it's like literally no other professional advisor understands the implication of the bearer instrument element, because they don't own it. And if they did, they would say, I can give you the best advice in the world. Maybe it'll cost a fortune, but one mistake and like that advice is worthless. Like, it's very hard to live in that space. So while I presented this in several conferences I attended, I don't profess to have like a complete solution, because I'm not sure that one exists. It's variable based on, like, again, the risk reward trade-off you're willing to accept. So my job as a professional is almost just to educate you that this is a reality, and then work backwards from there. It's like, hey, okay, death is one thing, but you're going to live for a long time. Maybe you haven't disclosed Bitcoin that you've sold, but Canada Revenue has done chain analysis. They've asked for wallet addresses so they can go back to the immutable ledger where your Bitcoin is held and just see the transactions. And they can put together a picture perfectly. It's like the beauty of the technology is also, again, the trade-off is that it's so transparent. So it's like, whether you acknowledge the issue now, midlife, or maybe when you pass, you have to come to terms with how to deal with it.
Okay. And you mentioned the term before, a digital bearer asset. So it occurs to me that Bitcoin's probably unlike something that people have encountered before in terms of what it means to custody it. So how do you help clients understand the responsibility of custodying the Bitcoin if they decide to invest in it?
I'm more of like I was always trained to look backwards as an accountant, the most recent year end. And so I now have to look forwards into the future. So I use a lot of patterns. And so it's just like, what has been your pattern of spending, or what has been your pattern of behavior while you have held it? Because we can speculate on what you might do in the future, but we have concrete information on what you did in the past. And so we can use that as a foundational layer to make plans for the future. It's just like, I shouldn't have sold all those Bitcoin, or, I should have kept it separate from this, or I shouldn't have done that. It's like, okay, well, let's knock off some of the mistakes you made, and let's at least mitigate the risk of you making those again, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring. Let's consider the possibility, that if you were to die or you were to get sick, it might be difficult for your spouse to handle your coin. So like, let's put these things together in a document that is easy for someone other than you to understand. And let's assume that whatever advisors you're working with now, maybe they won't be the same advisors one day. That's why you go to a big accounting firm or you go to a big law firm. It's so that like there's just a continuation of your service. It's like, I left my firm, but someone else picked up from where I left off. It's like, that's good. It's like there should be continuity for the clients. These are basic questions no one has asked of the Bitcoiners. You know what I mean? Because their biggest fear was more like, what is my tax bill going to be? You know what I mean? Is the government going to fine me? It's just like, what do I do with this wealth? Like, they're a very underserved part of the market because it's like, by the time people realized how valuable Bitcoin was, many of them had already made allegiances to, the account they'd always use or the lawyer they'd always use if they even had them. They had no idea what life insurance is because they're so young. Many of them, they don't contemplate that they might pass one day. Maybe they didn't have families when they first got the Bitcoin and now they're starting to have children. Some of them are moving out of the country, particularly during, the pandemic, a divisive time. Many people gave up their residency, didn't consider that. So it's the job of me, the professional, the progressive professional, to look at the pattern of behavior, look at like where your life is, where you want to go next, and just try and map out a way for all your dreams to come true and protect the Bitcoin that means so much to you.
Okay. And, when we're talking, the other assumption that we're sort of coming from is that governments either have a uninformed or an adversarial approach to the asset or taxing it. But how do you see that evolving over time, particularly when you're dealing with clients internationally across jurisdictions?
It's probably the biggest honeypot in the world to governments. So I can't imagine that their interest in it is going to wane. It will only increase in focused intensity until people are pressured enough to give up information. For instance, in Quebec, there's a new form. In Canada, there's a foreign property form such that if you own foreign property with a cost base of 100,000 Canadian or greater, you need to disclose it. There's not necessarily any taxes that you have to pay on it unless you were to sell it or spend it or move between wallets with different legal title. But there is a compliance requirement. In Quebec, the compliance requirement is zero. It's like if you own, hold, receive, you spend cryptocurrency, you need to disclose it. And so I look at that form, I looked at it in great detail, I've talked to people about it, and I'm like, who would have the knowledge to have put this form together? Like, I only deal with Bitcoin, but listed NFTs, it listed other tokens. And so it's like only someone with a great deal of subject matter expert, only someone, a professional like me, could even begin to put this together. Because what it is basically a fact-finding mission, such that, like, tell us what you have right now, and if you don't, that's okay. We'll find it later, and then we'll make reference to this form. So it's like, will that become pervasive across Canada? Is that just explicit to Quebec now and forever? I don't know. But I look at that and I think this is only the beginning. They did something similar with real estate in Canada. A lot of people were flipping condos, the assignments of condos, before you would even close and not paying taxes on them. And so letters were sent to the developers to disclose, the list of when the names changed. And then letters were sent to clients to say, like, if you're flipping 5 condos a year and making, I don't know, $100,000 a year as a real estate agent, it's like, that's business income you have to pay us. So they can do something similar with Bitcoin, but they need to understand it first. So that to me is creating demarcated lines between the different types of digital assets. And then they'll go towards like the ways in which they should be taxed. They look at the ways in which it should be done provincially and internationally. So it's called reciprocity. It's like you have like tax treaties between different countries, but what I have seen is whispers and also clear documentation of how they're going to harmonize taxation for cryptocurrencies across the world. But again, the advantage is that it's a bearer instrument. So it's like, while they might demand taxation upon you, there will always be other jurisdictions in game theoric ways who don't do that to attract your capital. And so some have done that, like Italy changed the laws, reduced the capital gains, and they increased them again. But you got to be careful of the estate planning too. Like, they might save you money while you're alive, but when you pass, you're going to be responsible for paying. So all I'm saying is that this is a minefield of activity, but it's also an opportunity for an educated professional and one in Bitcoin to help you navigate that minefield, because they're going to get their pound of flesh one way or another, the government.
Yeah, I think many Bitcoiners have the idea that they'll never sell their Bitcoin, so they'll never trigger a capital gains event. But increasingly in countries like Australia, we're seeing things enter the agenda such as unrealized capital gains. And I think that's been initially discussed on superannuation or pension balances over 3 million. But as you know, with inflation, that's going to end up catching a lot of people eventually. So what are your thoughts on that for Bitcoiners that are facing that kind of issue?
Yeah, so the unrealized capital gain taxation is egregious, in my opinion. Like, even having taxes more than 50%, but it's like you are a resident of a country, you benefit from its services. I don't know. That's more of like a moral question. It's like, how much tax should you pay? I just kind of deal with the laws the way they are. But to those Bitcoiners who hodl and have non KYC'd Bitcoin or Bitcoin that they mined long ago, recently, I'm not. Don't quote me on this. I believe it was Roger Ver, but there was like 80,000 Bitcoin moved from a very old wallet to another one. But everyone's watching it. Everyone's watching it move. And so, what would you do? I've spoken to some lawyers who help clients with what's called voluntary disclosure, such that, listen, I didn't know back then that moving the Bitcoin, spending it was a taxable event. So I'm going to disclose this to you, the government now. I'm going to pay some sort of taxation rate and probably plus some interest and penalties or fines. But there will always be those who they cannot catch, but you will live your life on the run. And the thing is, sooner or later, like the reciprocity will come to you, and it may not come to you through a tax authority. It might come through passport licensing. It's like where you didn't complete your exit tax return for Canada, but you go to renew your passport, and you're deficient or delinquent in some way you didn't think would affect you else. You can also be doxxed. It's like a lot of these early Bitcoiners, like I'm grateful to them. I learned so much from them, but they're public facing figures. So then you get into the social engineering or, more darker ways of the Bitcoin. Like the government is not the only people who want your Bitcoin. A lot of people do, especially as the price appreciates. So what I would say, it's more, I like to refer to it as Bitcoin realism. It's like, while it is a great opportunity, while it has maybe provided you with many benefits in life and insights that others don't possess, it comes with trade-offs, just as I said, with families with generational wealth. And I don't think my job as an advisor would be to, gloss over these issues. It's more to just educate people and let them choose for themselves what to do. And as you say, the unrealized taxation or proposed taxation, it just motivates people to leave and to go elsewhere with their money. And so maybe those things aren't bad that they happen. It's better that they happen in one place so that they don't happen in another. But they're just testing the fences almost, like to see what people will accept.
Okay, and I guess that sort of takes us to like this discussion about, flag theory or, jurisdiction arbitrage. And I'm guessing you've guided clients who've considered leaving countries like Canada. So for those that are considering leaving their country, what do people need to consider when they're exiting and also deciding where they want to relocate to?
The biggest problem is like you can't have your cake and eat it too. In Canada, you're taxed based on residency. It's like, even if you live in another country, it's like as long as you have, there's certain levels, requirements you have to meet. If you have a property here, you have investments here, you have family here, it's like they can make an argument that you're a Canadian resident. So even if you live in like a tax-free jurisdiction, say the Middle East, where they're not taxing your cryptocurrency, your Bitcoin, you're still taxed on your worldwide income in Canada while you're a resident. And in order to not be a resident, you have to, dispose of, your assets in Canada at their market value, regardless of whether you sold them. It's a deemed disposition. So if your Bitcoin has a cost base of $10, but a market value of $120,000, you can imagine they'll let you leave, but you've got to complete your exit tax return, and you've got to pay the piper before you go. So in a way, it's almost like, but I don't want to pay the taxes. That's why I want to leave. Do you get what I mean? But there's no way of doing that legally. Now they can just go, and people have, like, we still have the requirements when you travel across the border. You can't take more than $10,000, but you can take billions in your head. Like I've said before, if you have a seed phrase or a hardware wallet, if you want to risk that, but that doesn't preclude your responsibilities to the tax authority that you left. And so while you might escape, you still have family members or you have other property or assets here that they'll simply take if it's later proven that you didn't pay the piper when you left. So it's almost like I'm more partial to having more than one residency, like in terms of flag theory, as opposed to like an all or nothing approach. And I've been to El Salvador several times, Costa Rica, Mexico, met Bitcoiners in these places. And honestly, it's like, while Canada isn't perfect, I look at it as the devil you know versus the devil you don't know. I didn't appreciate the way that they treated some Canadians during the pandemic, but it's just like, and then later they came for the money, those who donated to the convoy and so forth. But you do have sovereignty over your money here by being able to hold Bitcoin. In other countries, it's outright banned. Or even if the taxes are favorable, you might have issues with like theft or crime. Like even something in Costa Rica, like there's a lot of like creatures there that could bite you. You know what I mean? Like it's like the lifestyle. It's like, or you live in Florida, maybe like an alligator or crocodile or something will grab one of your children. It's just, I don't know. There's more lifestyle considerations you need to think about than purely the tax. So I guess the counsel that I've given to people inquiring about leaving is to think more than just like how much am I going to lose, like what it's going to cost me, and think of like the trade-offs that you're like of day-to-day things. Because even if you gave away half your Bitcoin, if you're an early Bitcoiner, it's still nothing. You know what I mean? It's more of like a matter of principle. It's like you still have more than almost everyone. And it's just like if you really want to leave, is it really fair to take all your money with you and leave others behind? I don't know. It's just like do you have you earned the right to not pay the tax? Again, it's more of like a philosophical, ethical, moral question that like I'm not equipped to answer. I just tell people the facts and let them decide for themselves. So that aspect of the business has not gone exactly as I thought. More people just need advisors to tell them, to give them straight talk. And then I tell them, yes, I visited these places, but I like it here. I'm going to stay here. That's just my perspective. Do you know what I mean? Like that's better counsel than
Yeah.
telling them, I've got a secret way for you to escape and never pay any tax. It doesn't exist.
Yeah, that's a much more practical and useful approach than sort of taking an ideological approach about taxation. So, taxes, they're probably annoying to most people, but I've heard you also speak a lot about professional integrity. Like, why is that important to you?
To me, integrity is a word we throw around, but it's almost like to do the right thing when no one is watching. It's like I could probably do better in business if I told people, like I said, there's a free lunch here, there's an escape hatch, but I wouldn't be much of a professional if I did that. You know what I mean? So it's like judging the professional by the merit of their character, their actions, rather than their words. So, like, I pay my taxes. I own and operate businesses in this country. I live in this country. I don't always agree with the politics in this country, but I vote, to try and find my way out of a rut, perhaps. And sometimes the party that I vote for wins, and sometimes they don't. But I found that during the pandemic, a lot of professionals absconded, professional responsibility to be impartial to some of the mandates, which I perceived as a professional to be unfair, to be inconsistently applied. And so I lost a lot of respect for people I once worked with. And I feel that it impedes your ability to give advice to others because you yourself just blindly follow like what you were instructed to do. You know what I mean? It should be a critical thinker. You should challenge the status quo. You should have uncomfortable conversations. You should get in trouble sometimes. You know what I mean? If only to hold each other accountable. Like it's the duty of the chartered professional accountant to protect the public interest, to protect the public interest, not your interest per se, the public's interest. And sometimes that involves, doing those things, as I said. So that was just like a litmus test I found. And so now I'm not surprised that more egregious taxation is coming because a lot of people conceded that the mandates that were in place, well, oh well, those are the rules, and so they're coming for your money, or they're coming for other things in life. But it's a consequence, in my opinion, of professionals not upholding their oaths. But that's just my experience. Like maybe others would disagree, but I find that like it's my duty as a Bitcoiner to tell Bitcoiners the truth as I see it as a professional, and then have the accountability that if what I'm saying is incorrect, then I'm liable for that.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a really strong values-based, like foundational approach, which is admirable. And I'm curious to know what sort of role Bitcoin plays in that, or how you view that in terms of what is value, or how you think about value.
Bitcoin to me forces accountability like almost anything else. It's like if you don't take the time to study it, first of all, you'll be exposed if you ever spend time with a proper Bitcoiner. Second of all, if you make a mistake, there's no takebacks. It's just like you're not going to be able to retrieve that Bitcoin unless quantum computer experiment, maybe decades from now, we'll be able to find a solution to break the encryption. But it's like many other things, there's always a way out. There's always like an escape valve, like there isn't with Bitcoin. It's like you are responsible. And so I think that you need to take that responsibility very seriously. And I think there's a lot of value in professions like accounting, like in law, and others where these people are not Bitcoiners, but they're very smart and they have very good advice for you that you don't like. You know what I mean? Just as like the Bitcoiners are the same and they have advice for the professionals that you don't like. It's like you're led to believe that you need to work for 20 or 30 years to build up a profession, to build up a book of clients and so forth. In Bitcoin, you just need to invest in like exponential technology and you can shrink your career into only a few years. It's like maybe that's based on timing, maybe luck, I don't know, but it's more to realize we have more in common than we consider But because we're not, like, you can see it now, the arguments between the paper Bitcoiners and the real Bitcoiners, I call them, with the hardware wallets, both bring people to Bitcoin. Both bring people to Bitcoin. Like, older people they're not gonna be able to figure out how to use the hardware wallets, even if that's like the true sovereignty of owning your money. They have challenges with that. But if they're willing to have a conversation about how I can own an ETF or something, at least they're in the room with you. You know what I mean? Maybe it's not what I would do, but that just because I wouldn't do it doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. It's like, you're allowed to do what you want. You're free to do that. So you counsel people and you give them that good advice. So I see the role of the professionals having integrity to buy Bitcoin, own Bitcoin, understand what it means before you counsel the client on whether, what they should or should not do, just because there are real consequences if you make a mistake. Like, I wouldn't get my estate planning advice from a normal accountant who doesn't own Bitcoin, because they're going to miss some key element. All the paperwork will look great, probably be a big bill attached to the end, but at the end of the day, they'll miss some critical piece that I might miss, but ultimately I would at least educate you on, because I myself had to deal with that same issue. That's the integrity of Bitcoin.
And I guess what you've touched on before is that Bitcoin is not just one thing. It means many different things to each individual. So for you, how does it, what does it mean in terms of how you spend it, or how you save it, or how you think about preserving value into the future?
I found the biggest change Bitcoin made to my life was almost like culturally or socially. It empowered me to speak out more. I was very introverted before and quiet. I had no presence really on social media to tell the truth about some of the things I've struggled with in life, to express my concern and my excitement over elements of the Bitcoin space and how it evolves. It just empowered me to be a better human, if I would say that. I like to say, Bitcoin is a ladder to a better life. I think if every person didn't have to worry about finances or money or their career, they would be more who they really are. Like, I've never met so many more real people than in Bitcoin, that maybe you don't see each other all the time. Maybe you don't like go to the office together, but when you meet up at like a conference, you embrace, you have like such a deep connection, because it just requires so much sacrifice, so much study and focus to be a real Bitcoiner. I'm just a better husband. I'm a better father. I'm a better accountant, a better business partner. At least I like to think so. Maybe check with these people to verify, but I wouldn't have done those things otherwise, because I was always afraid, I might lose my job if I say this. I might lose a friendship if I challenge that. With Bitcoin, it's just like you all start off on equal footing and you work your way up. And so I'm humble to those who own the Bitcoin before me, because they just have a realness to them that I strive to have myself. And, there's the expression, everyone buys Bitcoin at the price they deserve. I think everyone becomes, their truest self when they're meant to. And for me, it was when I bought Bitcoin, it changed everything. It's almost like my life was an inflection that went in a completely different direction. And I'm grateful for that more than I am for the money or the spending of it or the expertise I have. I just am a better version of me.
Wow. Okay. I guess for me, that's what it's done for me, is it's tried to get me to focus on the questions. What are things that are worth more than Bitcoin? So for you, what are some of those things that you think are worth more than Bitcoin?
Number one, integrity. It's like I was disillusioned by the pandemic and my profession and the way I was treated for some of the health choices that I made. And so I initially resigned from my institute, because I thought, I can't be a CA. It's like, if like the people I looked up to have no integrity, the CA doesn't mean anything. And then I thought, I don't want to be defined by how others treat me. I'm going to be defined by how I treat others. And so I kept it and I moved on. But I made sure that like my counsel with clients always has the utmost of integrity. And secondly, I thought I need to lead by example. I can't just talk about doing the right things. And I thought, as an advisor, I can't be counseling people about non-Bitcoin digital assets. So people who have approached me, I've just politely declined. I don't own them. I don't believe in them. That's not to say you can't, but I can't give you the advice you're looking for. Another accounting firm may. And then in my own personal life, I thought, I can't have friendships. I can't have family with people I'm not ideologically aligned to, or people who can't critically think or accept those with differing opinions or choices that they make with their bodies or with their lives. And so I had to have hard conversations, or in some cases, no conversations, and exit those people. You have to take those risks in order to be a better you. And so Like ultimately this all coalesced into being a better father, a better husband, a member of the community. Even if I'm a more divisive member, I'm a more relevant member. And that was the biggest payoff, I think, because I always told my children to do the right thing. I was told other people, but when faced with doing the right thing, it's actually very hard. It's very, very hard. But it's harder to pretend that you don't have to do that. And I find that that's what like many people have been exposed with these recent years, whereas the Bitcoiners are like, they've had to pay some very hard lessons. People who could be billionaires who are not, people who could have bought it but didn't. People who bought it and lost it. Like it's just like they've gone through these, it's almost like an emotional turmoil so that wherever they are now, even if they only have a tiny bit of Bitcoin, it's just like it means so much to them because all the other areas of their life needed to like be aligned. Like Bitcoin is almost like a life balancing like device. It's very hard to be a tourist in Bitcoin. I find real Bitcoin I'm speaking about. I think it's easier to be a tourist with paper Bitcoin, but that's another discussion. You really own the Bitcoin. It's like you really have to be responsible because if you let a leakage in, like even if you have people like, I don't like you and your Bitcoin, don't talk about it. It's like, I have to talk about it. Like I had to, I couldn't not talk about it. I couldn't be private with the Bitcoin because I'm excited by it. It needs more people to do that, to evangelize it. So that really balanced my life out. So I would say like integrity of profession, who you show up as in the community, and ultimately who you are as a person, as a man or a woman, and in a family setting, because Bitcoin's also about the future, largely the future, the next generation. So you got to plant the seeds for that.
I definitely hear the passion and the excitement when you talk. It's very real. And so when you look forward and you think about Bitcoin and you think about the world, what are you most excited right now about Bitcoin?
Honestly, I'm just excited during probably one of the darkest times in history of my life, like during the pandemic, when it felt like everything was over and everyone was divided. Something beautiful grew from the ashes. Like without the pandemic, maybe we never go fully virtual. Maybe we never meet. You know what I mean? Like it's like Bitcoin almost thrives on chaos. And truthfully, now when I look around at Bitcoin, the price is up high. It's kind of boring. It's almost like, oh, it's gone up. It's like it's when it swings that like just the truth comes out. So it's almost like it's darkest before the dawn. Whatever analogy you want to use, it's just like human beings are so resilient. We're always going to invent some technology like Bitcoin version 1.0 like we are the things that need to be upgraded in order to adhere to it. You know what I mean? It's never going to change. So it's like it came at a time when we actually needed a lot of discipline and we needed to be, to come together a little bit more. And Bitcoin will be exactly the same, long after we're gone. So it just gave me hope in a better future, kind of like the internet once did. Although I feel like the internet is a very strange place now. It has not turned out the way I thought it would. And I've actually stepped back from the internet quite a bit and social media where I was quite prevalent previously. And that has given me more reason to go camping and spend time in the outdoors. But I think that Bitcoin is kind of like that too. It's a way of like equalizing humanity and giving us hope for the future because it just takes so much power away from the prevailing structures that controlled us for so long. And hopefully it doesn't become the same, but we'll see.
Yeah. And sort of thinking about our audience now to sort of tie it all together, like what advice would you give to a high net worth individual or an entrepreneur who's still unsure about Bitcoin?
I've said this before, but I took great risks to my professional reputation for some of the choices that I've made and for some of the things that I've said, and I have no regrets. And there's far more interested quiet parties in what I have done and what I am doing than there are, public statements, family offices, endowment funds, charities, governmental entities, international organizations. Like everyone wants to know a lot about Bitcoin. The challenge is the Bitcoiners, in my experience, are difficult to get through to. It's difficult to bridge that gap. As an accountant, I never would have thought my job would be almost as a bridge between worlds, between, let's call it the traditional fiat world and the Bitcoin world. I thought I would be full on in the Bitcoin world, but I'm having a lot of success just educating. And so at the Bitcoin conference in Canada, Montreal this fall, there's going to be like a Bitcoin for Corporations Day, similar to what we have in America, but much smaller scale. But Canada's a much smaller country and a much more boutique country, I'll call it. But myself and other professionals are attending to state why we are in Bitcoin and how Bitcoin can assist you in your profession, your profession as an accountant, as a lawyer, as a whatever, in your business, as an entrepreneur or an aspiring entrepreneur, in your life. You know what I mean? In terms of like the changes that it affected. Like, these are real stories from real people who took real risks. And to me, like, that's the greatest potential that Bitcoin has right now. So as a Bitcoiner, I think orange pilling people has evolved. It's just like the
Okay.
type of people I speak with are not orange pilled in the same way maybe the Bitcoiners were 5 years ago. It's like, in order for the professional class to enter the space, as they have a lot in America, actually, with the passing of accounting standards and so forth, some publicly traded companies like Michael Saylor, MicroStrategy, and there's other treasury companies, but it's more just for professionals to understand that this is a real asset. It's here to stay. It has serious ramifications in terms of planning that you are not trained for, that you will unlikely to understand unless you own it and operate it and lose some. And so you should value those who were early. Someone asked me recently, how do I catch up to where you are? And I just chuckled and I thought, there's no shortcuts. It took me years, hours. I don't even know how many at this point. And I still feel like I know nothing. But it's like, just be humble to those who came before you and appreciate that you may have something to add that they didn't think of. But know that it took so much humility to be in Bitcoin, and that every contribution matters. So I'm hoping that my example leads more. But as a Bitcoiner, I would say, and as a professional, I would say, just take your responsibilities seriously, not just like taxes, your family planning and future planning, because otherwise, like, a lot of Bitcoin has been lost and a lot more will be lost, just judging from the type of plans I've seen people make for the future.
Great. And you mentioned earlier you're not that active online, or you've stepped back from the internet. But finally, if people want to reach out to you about Numbly or Generatio, what's the best way to get in contact with you?
Just Google me. There's a podcast I've done on other subjects, some small ones. Reach out that way to one of the websites if you wish. But I find that I was getting too caught up in the social media, and now I'm busy enough that I have more conversations like this, like publicly and privately. And it's doing more for me than, like, there's only so much I can communicate with a tweet. There's only so much I communicate with like a short video. I like to have longer, more substantial conversations to understand, where people are. Even if it's just an inquiry, we do those free of charge. If it's a bigger engagement, we take the time to really dig into like what keeps you up at night, what bugs you. But I'm a boutique person. Like, I'm not for everyone. But in Bitcoin, it's so hard to find a good professional. I'm connected to networks internationally where I can connect you with the right accountant or with the right lawyer, and other professionals is the two that I deal with the most. So I would say that would be the best way, because it also gives you a way, because I've created enough content, you can get to know me before you talk to me. And I wish I would have had that with others, where I could, scrutinize, the way that they think and the way that they talk. You're able to do that before you even reach out to me. So I would say, see if I'm the right fit for you, because I'm not like anyone else. I'm completely original and bespoke in the services I provide.
Well, I've really enjoyed this conversation that we've had today, and I look forward to having another one with you again in the future. Thank you again for taking the time to join us today.
Likewise. Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it.
Cheers, John.
Take care.
Take care.